The morning sun of Vex 7 cast long shadows through the dense jungle canopy as Jake Morrison checked his basic survival gear one final time. The humid air made his standard academy uniform stick to his skin, but he had learned to ignore such minor discomforts during his 3 years at the Galactic Military Academy. Around him, his 3 alien squadmates prepared for what many considered the most challenging survival exercise in known space. Zixtal stood motionless near a cluster of purple flowering vines, his crystalline body already beginning to shimmer with the telltale signs of his species' natural camouflage abilities. The Quartzian's transparent skin caught and bent light in ways that made him nearly invisible to most organic eyes. His internal crystal matrix could refract electromagnetic radiation across multiple spectrums, creating an almost perfect optical illusion. Jake watched with professional interest as the alien's form began to blur and fade, becoming little more than a distortion in the air. "The refraction field will mask my thermal signature and electromagnetic output," Zixtal explained in his musical voice, each word chiming like struck crystal. "My people have used this technique for thousands of years to avoid the great sand predators of our homeworld. No creature has ever detected a properly concealed Quartzian." Velthra moved with liquid grace as she tested her metamorphic abilities, her blue-green skin shifting through dozens of different textures and patterns. One moment she resembled rough bark, the next she looked like smooth stone, and then her surface became covered in what appeared to be jungle moss. Her shape-shifting abilities were legendary even among the diverse species of the Galactic Alliance. The metamorph could alter not just her appearance but her actual physical structure, mimicking any surface she touched. "My cellular structure allows perfect environmental adaptation," she said, her voice changing pitch and tone as her throat modified itself to produce different sounds. "I can become any part of this jungle. The predator will never distinguish me from the natural environment." Krillanox scuttled between the trees on his 6 powerful limbs, each movement precise and calculated. The arachnoid's dark exoskeleton gleamed with a wet sheen as he activated his pheromone dampeners, small devices attached to various points on his body that would eliminate his natural scent. His species were master hunters on their homeworld, capable of stalking prey for days without detection. His multiple eyes could track movement across nearly 360 degrees, and his limbs could grip any surface with enough strength to crush stone. "Scent masking is only the beginning," Krillanox clicked, his mandibles creating sharp sounds that his translator converted to standard galactic. "My people understand patience and stillness. We can remain motionless for hours while prey passes within striking distance. This exercise will test endurance, not just hiding ability." Jake nodded politely at each explanation while quietly gathering materials from the jungle floor. He collected a handful of dark mud from a nearby stream, mixed it with decomposed leaves and plant matter, and began rubbing the mixture over his exposed skin. His actions drew curious looks from his teammates, who seemed puzzled by his primitive approach to camouflage. "Is that some form of chemical masking agent?" Velthra asked, her skin shifting to match the colors of the mud Jake was applying to his face and hands. "Just mud," Jake replied simply, continuing to work the mixture into his clothing and equipment. "My grandfather taught me this technique when I was young. We used it for hunting deer back on Earth." The alien cadets exchanged glances that Jake interpreted as polite bewilderment. His methods seemed laughably primitive compared to their advanced biological and technological capabilities. During their months of training together, Jake had often been the subject of good-natured jokes about human limitations. His species lacked natural camouflage, enhanced senses, or shape-shifting abilities. Humans couldn't see in multiple spectrums, didn't possess hardened exoskeletons, and couldn't refract light through their bodies. Commander Thizes, their reptilian instructor, materialized from the jungle shadows with the fluid grace that made her species excellent stealth trainers. Her scaled skin shifted from brown to green as she moved, automatically adjusting to match her surroundings. The vertical pupils of her golden eyes dilated as she studied each cadet with predatory intensity. "The Vex Stalker has been released," she announced, her forked tongue tasting the air for scents. You have a 30-minute head start before it begins actively hunting. Remember, this creature has successfully tracked down every cadet group for the past 15 years. It can detect heat signatures, electromagnetic fields, chemical traces, and movement patterns. Your survival depends on your ability to avoid detection for 72 hours. She paused to study Jake's mud-covered appearance with what might have been amusement. The extraction point is 12 kilometers north of here. You may travel together or separately, but all team members must reach the extraction zone to pass the exercise. Any cadet who triggers the stalker's proximity alarm will be immediately removed from the exercise and will fail the course. As commander, guises faded back into the jungle. Jake's teammates began implementing their concealment strategies. Zixtal's crystal matrix hummed softly as his refraction field reached full power, making him nearly invisible. Velthra's skin took on the exact texture and color of the jungle canopy above, her form becoming indistinguishable from hanging vines. Krylonox activated his pheromone dampeners and began moving with the absolute silence that only his species could achieve. Jake finished applying mud to his gear and began gathering additional materials. He selected specific types of leaves and small branches, weaving them into his uniform to break up his human silhouette. His movements were slow and deliberate, each action serving a specific purpose that his alien teammates couldn't quite understand. Are you not concerned about the stalker's advanced sensors? Zixtal asked, his voice seeming to come from empty air. Your concealment method appears to rely entirely on visual deception. Visual deception is just part of it, Jake replied, adjusting a cluster of leaves on his shoulder. The trick is not to fight what you are, but to become something the predator doesn't recognize as prey. The alien cadets found this statement confusing but had no time to ask for clarification. The jungle around them had grown quiet, and the absence of normal wildlife sounds indicated that something dangerous was approaching. The Vex stalker had begun its hunt earlier than expected, and somewhere in the dense green maze surrounding them, death was searching for their scent. Jake took a deep breath and settled into a crouched position that would have looked uncomfortable to his alien teammates but felt natural to him. He had learned patience from his grandfather during long hunting trips in the forests of Earth, and he was prepared to use every lesson those experiences had taught him. The jungle fell silent except for the distant sound of moving water and the soft whisper of wind through the canopy above. Jake remained motionless in his chosen position, mud-covered and patient, while his alien teammates began their retreat deeper into the dense vegetation. The 30-minute head start had passed quickly, and now the real test would begin. Zixtal moved first, his crystalline form barely visible as light bent around his refraction field. He glided between the trees with confidence born from generations of evolutionary advantage. His people had never known a predator capable of detecting their concealment abilities, and he felt certain that this exercise would prove no different. The Quartzian's internal crystal matrix hummed with power as he adjusted his field to match the changing light conditions of the jungle floor. Velthra followed a parallel path, her metamorphic abilities allowing her to blend seamlessly with each surface she encountered. Her skin shifted constantly, matching bark when she pressed against trees, mimicking stone when she crossed rocky outcroppings, and taking on the appearance of moss when she moved through areas of dense ground cover. The metamorph's confidence matched that of her crystalline teammate, as her species had perfected the art of environmental adaptation over millions of years. Krylonox chose a different approach, using his 6 limbs to climb high into the canopy. Where his natural hunting instincts told him predators rarely looked, the arachnoid's pheromone dampeners worked silently to eliminate any chemical trace of his presence, while his multiple eyes scanned the jungle below for signs of danger. His species understood patience and stealth better than most, and he felt prepared for whatever challenge the stalker might present. Jake watched his teammates disappear into the jungle before settling more comfortably into his position. He had chosen his hiding spot carefully, selecting a location where fallen logs and dense undergrowth created natural cover. The mud on his skin had dried to match the earth around him, and the leaves woven into his uniform broke up his human outline. More importantly, he had positioned himself downwind from the direction his teammates had taken, ensuring that any predator following their scent would pass his location without detecting him. The first sign of the stalker came as a low vibration through the ground, felt rather than heard. Jake's grandfather had taught him to pay attention to such subtle warnings during their hunting trips on Earth. Animals could sense danger long before humans became aware of it, and the complete absence of jungle sounds meant something deadly was approaching. The vexed stalker emerged from the shadows like a nightmare made flesh. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, its body covered in sleek black scales that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Multiple sensory organs dotted its elongated head, each one specialized for detecting different forms of energy and matter. Bioluminescent patches along its spine pulsed with soft blue light as its internal sensors analyzed the environment around it. Jake held his breath and remained perfectly still as the predator passed within 10 meters of his position. The creature's head turned constantly, its various sensors sweeping the area for any trace of its prey. One of its sensory organs, a crystalline structure that pulsed with violet light, suddenly focused on something in the distance. The stalker's entire body tensed, and it began moving with purposeful speed toward the area where Zixtal had passed. The Quartzian's refraction field, which had seemed so effective against organic vision, blazed like a beacon to the stalkers. Specialized detection organs. The creature's bioluminescent sensors were specifically designed to track energy signatures, and Zixtal's crystal matrix generated exactly the type of electromagnetic disturbance that triggered its hunting instincts. The predator moved through the jungle with increasing speed, following the energy trail like a bloodhound following a scent. Zixtal realized his danger too late. The stalker's first attack came from above, the creature having somehow climbed into the canopy without making a sound. The Quartzian's refraction field shattered under the impact of razor-sharp claws, his crystalline body producing a sound like breaking glass as he crashed to the jungle floor. His confidence dissolved along with his camouflage as he scrambled to his feet and began running through the undergrowth. The predator's attention immediately shifted to its next target. Velthra's metamorphic abilities required constant cellular adjustment to maintain her camouflage, and each change generated minute electromagnetic pulses that the stalker's sensors could detect. Her desperate shape-shifting became increasingly erratic as panic set in, making her even easier to track. The creature followed her electromagnetic signature through the jungle, its movements becoming more aggressive as it closed the distance. Velthra tried to become perfectly still, mimicking a moss-covered boulder, but her fear made precise control impossible. Her cellular structure continued to fluctuate in response to her emotional state, creating a pattern of energy emissions that stood out clearly to the stalker's sensors. The predator circled her position twice before launching itself directly at her hiding spot. The metamorph abandoned her concealment attempts and fled, her form shifting rapidly as she tried to navigate the dense jungle terrain. Her species' greatest asset had become a liability, as each transformation made her more visible to the creature pursuing her. She could hear the stalker crashing through the vegetation behind her, gaining ground with each passing moment. Krillinox fared no better despite his elevated position. The arachnoid's pheromone dampeners were designed to mask his scent from other biological creatures, but they had no effect on the stalker's bioelectrical sensors. His 6 limbs evolved for precision and strength, created distinctive vibration patterns as he moved through the trees. The predator tracked these vibrations with mechanical precision, following the path of disturbed branches and leaves that marked the arachnoid's passage. The creature's ability to hunt by bioelectrical fields made traditional stealth techniques useless. Every heartbeat, every nerve impulse, every cellular activity generated the electromagnetic signatures that the stalker was designed to detect. Krillinox's natural hunting abilities meant nothing against a predator that could sense the electrical activity of his nervous system. Jake watched the chaos unfold from his concealed position, remaining motionless as his teammates' panicked flight carried them deeper into the jungle. The stalker passed his location 3 more times during its pursuit, but never showed any awareness of his presence. The creature seemed confused by prey that didn't react predictably to its hunting methods, occasionally pausing to scan areas. Where it had detected no electromagnetic activity, the human remained patient, knowing that movement or panic would reveal his position instantly. His grandfather's lessons about persistence and stillness had prepared him for exactly this type of situation, and he understood that survival often meant waiting for the right moment rather than taking immediate action. Jake waited until the sounds of pursuit faded into the distance before carefully rising from his concealed position. His teammates had fled deeper into the jungle, their panicked flight making them easy targets for the stalker's advanced sensors. The human understood that rushing to help them would only result in his own capture, so he chose a different approach based on lessons learned during countless hunting trips with his grandfather. Moving with deliberate slowness, Jake began following the trail left by the stalker's passage. The creature had torn through the undergrowth in its pursuit of the alien cadets, leaving broken branches and disturbed earth that told the story of its hunt. Jake's grandfather had taught him to read such signs during their expeditions in the forests of Earth. Where tracking wounded deer required patience and careful observation, the human's approach differed fundamentally from his teammates' strategies. Where they relied on technological enhancement and evolutionary advantages, Jake used skills that humans had developed over thousands of years of survival. He tested the wind direction by releasing small particles of dust, noted the position of shadows to track time, and listened for the subtle sounds that indicated the movement of large predators through dense vegetation. Jake's first discovery came when he found the shattered remains of Zixtal's crystalline camouflage field. The Quartzian had managed to escape the initial attack, but the debris scattered across the jungle floor revealed the futility of his concealment method. The stalker's bioluminescent sensors had detected the energy signatures that the crystal matrix generated, turning the alien's greatest asset into a beacon for the predator. Following the trail further, Jake found evidence of Velfa's frantic, shape-shifting attempts. Patches of disturbed earth showed where she had tried to mimic different surfaces, while broken vegetation marked her desperate flight path. The electromagnetic pulses generated by her cellular transformations had created a trail that the stalker could follow with mechanical precision, making stealth impossible despite her species' legendary abilities. Krillinox's path through the canopy was equally easy to track. The arachnoid's 6 limbs had left distinctive marks on tree bark, while his weight had broken branches that still swayed in the morning breeze. His pheromone dampeners had eliminated his scent, but they could not mask the bioelectrical activity of his nervous system or the vibrations created by his movement through the trees. Jake began to understand the stalker's hunting methodology as he studied the evidence of its pursuit. The creature relied entirely on technological sensors rather than natural instincts, making it vulnerable to prey that could avoid detection by those specific systems. His teammates had failed because they fought the jungle environment instead of becoming part of it, their advanced abilities generating the very signals that the predator was designed to detect. The human changed his approach accordingly. Instead of moving in straight lines toward a specific destination, he began following the natural contours of the land. He stepped only on solid ground that would not compress under his weight, avoided areas where his passage would disturb vegetation, and used existing animal trails whenever possible. His movements became a form of meditation, each step carefully planned and executed. Jake's understanding of persistence hunting proved crucial to his survival strategy. His grandfather had explained that ancient humans succeeded as predators, not through superior speed or strength, but through their ability to outlast their prey. They could track wounded animals for days, maintaining a steady pace that eventually exhausted even the swiftest deer or antelope. The key was patience combined with efficient movement. The stalker's behavior patterns became clear as Jake continued his observations. The creature hunted in cycles, following detected energy signatures until they either disappeared or led to a capture. When it lost a trail, the predator would return to previously marked locations to search for new targets. This territorial behavior created predictable patterns that Jake could exploit. Using this knowledge, Jake began creating false trails to redirect the stalker away from his teammates. He gathered organic materials with strong electromagnetic properties and arranged them in patterns that would confuse the creature's sensors. Certain plants native to Vex 7 generated bioelectrical fields similar to those produced by nervous systems, and Jake used these to create decoy signatures that would draw the predator's attention. His first successful misdirection came when he led the stalker toward a grove of luminescent fungi that pulsed with regular electrical patterns. The creature spent nearly an hour investigating the false signals before determining that no actual prey was present. During this time, Jake's teammates were able to increase their distance from the predator, though they remained unaware of his assistance. Jake's movements through the jungle demonstrated skills that his alien classmates could not comprehend. He seemed to flow between obstacles rather than avoiding them, becoming part of the forest's natural rhythm instead of fighting against it. His mud camouflage had dried and cracked, making him appear like a natural formation rather than a living creature. More importantly, his controlled breathing and steady heartbeat generated minimal bioelectrical activity. The human's understanding of wind patterns allowed him to predict how his scent would travel through the jungle. He positioned himself downwind from the stalker's likely path, ensuring that any chemical traces would be carried away from the predator's location. His movements created no electromagnetic signatures, because he generated no fear responses or panic reactions that would increase his nervous system activity. As the day progressed, Jake began to shadow the stalker itself, learning its movement patterns and behavioral triggers. The creature's confidence in its technological advantages made it predictable, following programmed responses rather than adapting to changing circumstances. Jake realized that the predator had never encountered prey that could avoid its sensors. Through purely natural means, the alien cadets, monitoring Jake's progress through their suit sensors, found his methodology incomprehensible. Their advanced tactical software could not parse his seemingly random movements into any recognized pattern. To them, he appeared to be wandering aimlessly through the jungle while somehow avoiding certain death. They could not understand how primitive techniques could succeed where their evolutionary advantages had failed. Jake's success came from understanding that true predators did not rely on technological enhancement but on their ability to read and respond to their environment. His grandfather had taught him that the best hunters were those who could think like their prey, while remaining patient enough to wait for the perfect opportunity. The stalker's greatest weakness was its dependence on sensors that could be deceived by someone who understood their limitations. By evening, Jake had not only evaded the predator but had begun to actively influence its hunting patterns. He was no longer simply surviving the exercise but was starting to turn the tables on the creature that had terrorized Academy cadets for years. His teammates remained unaware of his activities, but they had noticed that the stalker's pursuit had become less focused and more erratic as the day progressed. The second day began with Jake tracking the stalker rather than hiding from it. During the night, he had observed the creature's sleep patterns and discovered that it entered a dormant state for approximately 4 hours before dawn. This behavior gave Jake the opportunity he needed to study his opponent up close and plan his next moves. The stalker had chosen a resting spot beneath a cluster of thick-trunked trees. Its bioluminescent patches dimmed to barely visible levels. Jake approached with the careful patience his grandfather had taught him during night hunts, each step planned and executed with absolute silence. The creature's sensors remained active even during its rest period, but they were focused on detecting movement and energy signatures rather than the subtle environmental changes that Jake created. From his observation position, Jake studied the predator's physical structure and behavioral patterns. The creature's sensory organs operated on predictable cycles, scanning different spectrums of energy in regular intervals. Its bioelectrical detectors were most active during the early morning hours, while its electromagnetic sensors reached peak sensitivity near midday. Understanding these patterns would allow Jake to time his movements for maximum effectiveness. Jake began gathering materials for his first trap while the stalker remained dormant. He selected strong vines that grew in abundance throughout the jungle, testing their tensile strength and flexibility. His grandfather had taught him dozens of snare designs during their hunting expeditions, each one suited to different types of prey and terrain. The key was creating restraints that would hold long enough to accomplish his objectives without requiring complex technology. The trap Jake constructed was deceptively simple. He used the natural growth patterns of jungle vines to create a spring-loaded snare that would tighten when triggered. The mechanism relied on stored energy from bent branches and twisted plant fibers, requiring no artificial components that might generate electromagnetic signatures. The entire system was designed to appear completely natural to any scanning device. Positioning the trap required careful consideration of the stalker's movement patterns. Jake had observed that the creature preferred to travel along established paths between dense vegetation, avoiding areas where its passage would be slowed by thick undergrowth. He selected a narrow passage between two large trees, where the predator would be forced to move in a predictable pattern. The trigger mechanism was Jake's most innovative addition to the basic snare design. Instead of using a traditional pressure plate or tripwire, he created a trigger that would activate when the stalker's bioluminescent patches reached a certain intensity. The creature's sensors brightened when it detected potential prey, and this behavioral response would activate the trap at the optimal moment. Jake tested his creation multiple times, ensuring that the mechanism would function properly under actual conditions. He adjusted the tension of the vines, modified the trigger sensitivity, and verified that the trap would hold against the stalker's considerable strength. The entire system was designed to temporarily restrain the creature rather than cause permanent harm. As Jake needed the predator alive for his larger plan, the stalker walked directly into the trap during its morning hunting patrol. The creature's bioluminescent patches flared as it detected residual energy signatures left by the fleeing alien cadets, triggering Jake's mechanism at precisely the right moment. The vines snapped tight around the predator's legs, while additional restraints activated to secure its arms and torso. The creature's struggles only tightened the organic bonds that held it. Jake emerged from concealment. Once the stalker was completely secured, he approached the trapped predator with the same careful patience he had shown throughout the exercise, studying its reactions and behavioral responses. The creature's sensors continued to function, but its ability to pursue prey had been temporarily eliminated. This gave Jake the opportunity he needed to implement the next phase of his plan. The human began creating sensory decoys, using materials he had gathered during his night observations. Certain plants native to Vex 7 generated bioelectrical fields that could confuse the stalker's detection systems. Jake harvested these plants and arranged them in patterns that would create false prey signatures, overwhelming the creature's sensors with multiple targets. Jake's understanding of the stalker's hunting methodology allowed him to exploit its greatest weakness. The creature had become entirely dependent on technological sensors, losing the natural instincts that made biological predators truly dangerous. It could not distinguish between genuine prey and artificial signals, making it vulnerable to deception tactics that would never fool a natural hunter. The bioluminescent fungi that Jake had discovered earlier proved particularly effective for creating false electromagnetic signatures. He gathered samples of these organisms and placed them along the routes his teammates had taken during their escape. The fungi's electrical patterns closely mimicked the nervous system activity that the stalker's sensors were designed to detect. Jake's trap had taught him valuable information about the creature's physical capabilities and limitations. The stalker was incredibly strong, but lacked the flexibility to escape from properly designed restraints. Its sensors could detect energy signatures across multiple spectrums, but they could not analyze the tactical implications of what they detected. The creature operated on programmed responses rather than adaptive intelligence. Using this knowledge, Jake began leading the stalker toward areas where natural predators still dominated the jungle ecosystem. Vex 7 hosted several species of apex predators that had evolved without technological enhancement, relying instead on natural instincts and environmental awareness. These creatures posed a genuine threat to the stalker. Because they could not be detected or predicted by its sensors, the territorial disputes between the stalker and Vex 7's native predators created opportunities for Jake to further influence the creature's behavior. He used his understanding of animal psychology to trigger confrontations that would force the stalker to defend itself rather than hunt Academy cadets. The predator's technological advantages meant nothing against opponents that attacked using purely biological methods. Jake's teammates watched from their hiding positions as their human squadmate systematically dismantled a creature that had terrorized the Academy for decades. Their advanced equipment and evolutionary advantages seemed suddenly inadequate compared to Jake's simple but effective approach. The alien cadets began to understand that survival skills could not be replaced by technological enhancement. As the second day drew to a close, Jake had transformed from hunted prey into the dominant predator in the jungle. His ancient techniques had proven superior to advanced technology, and his patient methodology had overcome the stalker's programmed responses. The creature that had never failed to capture Academy cadets was now struggling to maintain its own survival against a human who understood the fundamental principles of predator behavior. The final day of the exercise found Jake moving through the jungle with the confidence of a natural predator. His teammates remained scattered throughout the dense vegetation, their panic from the previous days gradually giving way to exhausted desperation. The stalker, once the undisputed apex hunter of Vex 7, now moved with uncertainty through territory that no longer felt familiar or safe. Jake had spent the night creating a network of false trails and sensory decoys that stretched across several kilometers of jungle. The bioluminescent fungi and electrically active plants he had positioned created dozens of phantom prey signatures that kept the stalker constantly distracted. Every time the creature attempted to lock onto the actual electromagnetic signatures of the alien cadets, Jake's decoys would trigger and draw its attention elsewhere. Zixtel was the first teammate that Jake located during his morning search. The Quartzian had wedged himself between two fallen logs, his crystalline body dim and powerless after his refraction field had been shattered. The alien's natural confidence had evaporated along with his technological advantages, leaving him trembling and vulnerable in his inadequate hiding spot. Jake approached with the same careful silence he had maintained throughout the exercise. The human's mud camouflage had been refreshed during the night, and his movements created no electromagnetic disturbances that might alert the stalker to their location. He reached Zixtal's position without triggering any of the creature's sensors, demonstrating a level of stealth that the crystalline alien found incomprehensible. The stalker passed this position 3 times during the night, Jake whispered, settling into concealment beside his teammate. Your hiding spot is visible from multiple angles, and you're positioned upwind from the creature's primary hunting route. We need to move you to a more secure location. Zixtal stared at the mud-covered human with a mixture of gratitude and bewilderment. His species had never needed to consider wind direction or visual angles when hiding from predators. The Quartzian's crystalline physiology and refraction abilities had always provided perfect concealment until they encountered a hunter specifically designed to defeat such advantages. Jake guided Zixtal to a carefully selected hiding spot where dense undergrowth and natural rock formations would mask both visual and electromagnetic signatures. He showed the alien how to position his body to minimize detection, explaining techniques that seemed impossibly primitive yet proved remarkably effective. The crystalline cadet followed Jake's instructions with the desperation of someone whose technological superiority had proven useless. Finding Velthro required more effort because her metamorphic abilities allowed her to blend perfectly with her surroundings when she remained motionless. Jake located her by reading the subtle environmental signs that indicated recent disturbance rather than relying on visual detection. Broken spider webs, disturbed insect activity, and slightly compressed soil revealed where the metamorph had passed. Despite her perfect camouflage, Velthra had exhausted herself through constant shape-shifting, her cellular structure barely maintaining cohesion after hours of frantic transformation attempts. The electromagnetic pulses generated by her morphic abilities had made stealth impossible, but she continued changing forms out of pure desperation. Jake found her cycling rapidly between different camouflage patterns, each change making her more visible to the stalker's sensors. "Stop shifting," Jake advised, settling beside the panicked alien. "Every transformation generates electromagnetic signals that the stalker can track. Choose one form and maintain it perfectly. Your species' greatest strength becomes a weakness when you let fear control your abilities." The metamorph forced herself to stabilize in the appearance of moss-covered bark, her exhausted cellular structure grateful for the chance to rest. Jake helped her select a form that would generate minimal electrical activity while providing effective visual concealment. He explained how movement and panic created the very signals that made detection inevitable. Regardless of how perfect her camouflage might appear, Krillinox proved the most difficult to locate because his arachnoid nature allowed him to climb into areas of the canopy that Jake could not easily reach. The human spent several hours tracking the subtle signs of the alien's passage through the trees, before finally locating him in a dense cluster of branches nearly 40 meters above the ground. The six-limbed cadet had wedged himself into a natural hollow, but his constant nervous movement created vibrations that traveled through the entire tree. Jake climbed carefully to Krillinox's position, using techniques his grandfather had taught him for accessing deer stands and observation posts. The arachnoid watched in amazement as the human ascended without creating any of the vibrations or disturbances that marked his own movements. Jake's approach to climbing emphasized smooth weight distribution and minimal contact with the tree structure. Your pheromone dampeners eliminate scent traces, but they can't mask bioelectrical activity or vibration patterns, Jake explained once he reached the alien's hiding spot. The stalker tracks nervous system activity, and fear makes those signals stronger. You need to control your emotional responses to become truly invisible. Jake spent the remaining hours of the exercise guiding his teammates toward the extraction point using routes that avoided the stalker's sensor network. He had mapped the creature's hunting patterns so thoroughly that he could predict its location and movement with remarkable accuracy. The human led his team through a carefully planned path that exploited gaps in the predator's coverage. The extraction zone appeared through the jungle canopy like a beacon of salvation. Commander Thizes waited beside the landing platform, her reptilian features showing surprise as all 4 cadets emerged together from the dense vegetation. Academy records showed no previous instance of an entire team surviving the stalker exercise, and the sight of Jake leading his exhausted but intact teammates challenged everything the instructors believed about the test. "Explain your survival methodology," Commander Thizes demanded, her golden eyes fixed on Jake's mud-covered appearance. "Our sensors show that the stalker passed within detection range of your team multiple times, but failed to register your presence. This outcome contradicts 15 years of exercise data." Jake began removing the leaves and organic debris from his uniform while his teammates collapsed in exhaustion around the landing zone. The stalker had retreated to the deeper jungle after its final failed attempt to locate prey, confused and frustrated by targets that refused to behave according to its programmed expectations. The creature relies entirely on technological sensors instead of natural hunting instincts, Jake explained, scraping dried mud from his hands. "My grandfather taught me that real predators don't announce their presence or depend on advanced equipment. They become part of their environment so completely that prey doesn't recognize them as a threat until it's too late." The alien cadets listened with new respect as Jake described techniques that predated spaceflight by thousands of years. His methods seemed impossibly primitive compared to their advanced abilities, yet they had proven superior to every technological advantage the galaxy could offer. The human had succeeded not by fighting the jungle, but by becoming indistinguishable from it. Commander Thizes recorded every detail of Jake's explanation for inclusion in Academy tactical databases. The Morrison Doctrine would soon become required study for survival training throughout the galactic military, teaching future officers that sometimes the oldest solutions remain the most effective. True predators didn't need advanced sensors. because they understood that the best camouflage was perfect integration with the natural world.